Welcome back. The day being the 14th, it's Valentine's Day, and also we are also keeping a keen eye on the happenings on the National Prayer Day that is happening at the Nyayo National Stadium, and we will be crossing over there. Remember, it will be presided over by, among others, the head of state, and of course, looking at the climate and looking at the situation in the country, we do need the prayers. We will be crossing over to the Nyayo National Stadium, but I will be later. For now, the youth, we are looking at matters youth, employment, innovation, incubation. That is the kind of discussion that we are going to be having right now. Now, earlier on in our other discussion, I talked about government wants to ensure that over 5,000 services are digitized, and it has done a lot. We are talking about hundreds now, and they've said that they want to ensure that everything is in the digital space. And among the people who are going to benefit of this is the youth. Looking at the post-COVID, looking at COVID-19, it taught us a lot. The COVID-19 pandemic showed us that beg your pardon, showed us that indeed we can do a lot, and especially in the digital space. And now, welcoming our guest this morning, Charles Thuo, who is the CEO and founder of Apex Laws. Karibu sana, Charles.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Let us go just post-COVID.
Yes.
Or during COVID-19, a lot of young people lost their jobs due to the pandemic, and others had to work from home, others had to take salary cuts.
Right.
Post-COVID, we are seeing the digital space is becoming a little bit more vibrant. I'd like you to touch on that first.
So, actually what they say, every cloud has a silver lining, right? So obviously the COVID pandemic, it affected a lot of things. But at the same time, it opened people's eyes. Some people, they lost their jobs, so they had time to think about, like, what else can I do? What are some of the other options? Which is actually how we came up with Apex Loads. Just having a lot of time and kind of like looking at problems. Because what COVID did is it opened a lot of people's eyes. Like, what is actually essential? What's happening, especially in logistics. A lot of people don't think about logistics. You just order something online and some magic happens and whatever you order arrives at your door. But COVID highlighted, the first thing is the importance of logistics. It is the backbone of any economy. You stop logistics, the whole economy stops. People don't get the medicine, people don't get their food, and everything stops, really. But a lot of people, like right now, you can see, like, even in the work environment, a lot of people are now switching to working from home. A lot more people are now becoming freelancers. Yes, it was bad, but at the same time, it had a silver lining.
Yes, and from your accent, I can tell that you have traveled.
Yes, so obviously I'm Kenyan, but I went to school in the U.S., so one of the lucky ones who get to get like a scholarship and go to school. So actually went there for
So when you went to school, you did the logistics?
No, so actually I'm an aerospace engineer by profession. So that's what I went to school for. But later on, so over where I was working, so working for Boeing Defense, and usually get paid by the hour. So a full-time job is like 40 hours a week. So in that 40 hours, most people work like 8 hours a day. So you work 8 hours a day, you can work Monday through Friday. But since I had a little bit of a long commute, so I had this arrangement with my manager that I can work 10-hour days. So I only had to work Monday through Thursday. So I always had a 3-day weekend. And so I actually got into logistics as a side hustle, like just trying to find something to do over the weekend. So I took the 2 weeks vacation that we get, and actually went and got a commercial driver's license to drive a truck. And the goal was to...
Whoa. Yeah. You are an engineer, but you decided to drive trucks.
Yes. So
a lot of young people who don't think that would be progress.
It's fascinating because this is African culture in general. A lot of people want a job where you put on a suit to go to work, or an office job and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at everything else, like especially COVID showed us most of those jobs are not even essential. But the most jobs that are essential, like transportation, like selling at the supermarket, at the doctors, at the clinic, those guys don't wear suits. But Africa, we have this cultural problem of prestige. A lot of people want prestige. But
white-collar jobs.
Yeah, but to me and for everybody else, I think the most important thing is can you pay your bills? Like at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And if you can pay your bills, and I always say, like, the money that you get, it's not written, where you got it. So it doesn't matter whether you're a plumber or whether you're an electrician and all that kind of stuff, right? And because what you realize, and that's kind of like how I got into logistics. Like, obviously, it was a difficult conversation with my parents, telling them I'm switching from being an engineer to go drive a truck. But I looked at it two ways. So let's say in the US, so my full-time job, you get paid every 2 weeks. And so what I came to find out is that the money I get paid in 2 weeks as an engineer, I can make that money in 3 days driving a truck or like having a truck. So a lot of people, if you're not in logistics, you don't know that. Like, let me give you an example. Right now, taking a load from Nairobi to Kampala, that load pays like $3,000. Here in East Africa, pays $3,000.
So that's a lot of money.
And you can get there in 2 or 3 days.
300,000.
Yeah, how many people make $3,000 in 3 days? Not that many, right?
But young people would not want to see this. And actually, the other guest, unfortunately, he is not able to come, is somebody who assists other people, and especially the young people, to get jobs. So if somebody is trying to get a job, and you hear that an engineer, and here we have logistics, and the logistics have money.
Right.
I'm quite sure a lot of young people would want that, as opposed to the white-collar jobs. You've seen placards of young people with their name, their degrees. They're saying that kindly help me with any type of job.
See, so the biggest thing is a mindset. People think, and that's with everybody. Whenever you're growing up, you get told, you got to study hard in school so you can get a good job. But I think we all need like a cultural change. The biggest thing is solving problems. And we do have quite a lot of problems in Africa to solve. I think like what we should be encouraging our youth, look at your environment, like find a problem. And these kids are brilliant. Like the development for Apex Load, it's done here in East Africa. We didn't do this in Silicon Valley. We have brilliant kids here with brilliant ideas. The biggest popular startup right now, OpenAI. Like Kenyans did most of the groundwork, like actual Kenyans. So I think what we should focus on, even like schools, I talk to a lot of university and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, we need to teach these young kids how to solve problems. And if you have a problem and you're solving a need, people will pay for it. Right? And that's the biggest thing. It's not necessarily going to do a job. So let's say even you're an accountant. Why do you need somebody to give you a job? Be a contractor. Like people need accounting. They don't have to hire you full time. You just say, hey, we have this job and you're an accountant. Can you do it for us? If you're a lawyer, you don't need to go work at a law firm. You can start your own shop because you can do contracting. But don't get me wrong, we still need engineers.
Yeah, we do.
We still need engineers, we still need doctors and all that kind of stuff. So those stuff have to be done. But we cannot do it. We cannot do it. And that's okay. There's plenty of other things that people can do and still make a good living.
Yes, and still on the same, and you've mentioned something quite interesting there on artificial intelligence. And Kenya more or less is on the baby steps, or in its baby steps when it comes to that. But looking at Kenya as a regional country here, talking about East and Central Africa, Kenya has made tremendous steps in terms of digitization, doing everything on phone, everything you can do. We even are fast with M-Pesa. Yeah.
So, and that's what I say, so that's one of our primary focus, Apex Load, is Africa. Because technically what we're trying to do is, if you compare logistics in the US and logistics in Africa in general, Africa is generously maybe like 15 years behind. So our goal at Apex Law is that we're trying to close that gap. You know, so, and if you look at Africa, it's divided into 4 regions, you know, and, you know, Northwest, South, and East. And I'm from Kenya, so East Africa was kind of like the best choice to enter the African market. And if you look at East Africa, you know, Kenya usually takes the lead. You know, because people are more, like I'll say, people in Kenya are risk takers. So like, which is really great because if you have an idea, people in Kenya will give you a chance. You know, if you go to different countries, people are kind of like sit and wait. You know, but like Kenyans, you know, people, they're more likely, they're curious and they're eager to learn, you know, which is kind of like interesting. Even like the Africa Tech Summit, it's in Nairobi.
Yeah,
you know, so Kenya.
Yes, it's starting tomorrow.
Yeah, it's starting tomorrow at Sarin Center. So Kenya is even attracting a lot of investors, you know, like at Sarin Center, there'll be over like 100, you know, big check writing investors that invest in Africa. Because as a startup, especially if you're doing work in Africa, is that a lot of people don't know about Africa. And sometimes it's really difficult to convince people that they don't have some of the basic services. You know, like services that have been around in the US for years. People don't understand, like, what, they don't have this? And people might get the wrong impression that maybe they don't need it. That's why they don't have it. But in reality, is that like nobody has introduced it yet. You know, like take for instance, like these platforms for getting taxis, right? If you need a taxi, you can just get a taxi on your phone. Like those solutions, you know, obviously started in the US, but that is something that we can build, right? It's not that complicated. You know, like let's say for instance, let's look at China. China maybe like 10 or 30 years ago, they were a third world country, but now they're a first world country. How did they do it? They just went to the US, they went to Europe and borrowed what's already working. Because essentially, most of the industries, you know, look at logistics, look at health, look at like engineering. It's universal. It's the same everywhere. Yes, there will be some little nuances, you know, cultural differences, but at the basic level, whatever works in the US or whatever works in Europe, it will work here. You know, and that's what China did. That's why they were able to develop so fast in a decade. And we can do the same. Like we do not have, like, let's say like logistics, looking at logistics, like we're 15 years behind. We don't have to take 15 years to get to where they are. Like we already know the solution that works and all we have to do is borrow it and implement it over here. Kind of like an example, you know, most people growing up, you know, they went from like not having a phone to a landline and then to a cell phone, right? But most of us growing up, we went from no phones to cell phones.
Yes.
So because you don't need a landline. So it took the US 20 years to get where they are. They went all through, you know, no phone, landline, and pagers and all that kind of stuff to get it to a cell phone. But we don't have to. We can go from no phone to an iPhone. Right? And that's essentially what we're trying to do. So most of the problems that we're facing here, especially logistics, you know, like a lot of people, you know, think logistics is complicated, you know, but a lot of that is kind of like, if you don't know, you don't know. Like I'm pretty sure you've maybe discussed a topic and you thought it was something else, but when somebody introduces you to it, I'm like, oh, it's not really that hard.
Oh. And looking at a lot of innovations and digital innovations.
Right.
A lot of them are by the youth.
Right.
You are a youth, and you said Kenyans are risk takers. You took a risk.
Right.
Kindly tell us more about how you took a risk. And you say your business is among maybe the first of its kind in Africa. You'll tell us. And being a young man, I'm quite sure even those big ones we would want to see on youth innovations and unemployment that has dogged the country, and what are some of the lessons in the digital space that a lot of youths can also learn from. I have with the CEO here, Charles Thuo, who is a CEO of Apex Law. There's something that you were talking about. You say that your business plan is more or less a new concept, and you say Kenyans are risk takers. Take us through that.
So like I was saying, like in logistics, you essentially have two groups of people. So you have the cargo owners and the transporters. And what I mean by a cargo owner, we define it with respect to the transporter. So let's say if a transporter gets cargo from a freight broker, the broker is the cargo owner at that instance, because he's the one giving the cargo to the transporter, he's the one paying the transporter. And if a transporter gets a load from a freight forwarder, the freight forwarder is the cargo owner. So we're not really referencing the actual owner of the cargo. We mean the cargo owner is the person who gives the transporter the cargo, is the one that pays him.
Where do you come in?
So where we come in is the connection, right? So if you look at
you're neither the truck owner, neither the cargo. You come in between.
So we do not touch the cargo or the truck. So at Apex Load, we're a matchmaker. Right? Because if you look at cargo owners, they have cargo, but they need trucks. And the truck owners, they have trucks, they need cargo. Because some of the issues, challenges in logistics, you may hear like a transporter would take a load from Nairobi to Kampala, and then they cannot find a return haul. They go there, get stuck for days, or most of them just come back empty. The same is true. But whenever you go talk to a cargo owner, like I remember about 2 weeks ago, we were in Kampala. We were talking to a company that ships eucalyptus to Dar es Salaam and Mombasa. And so they ship like 20 loads a week. And the biggest issue is that they have loads, but they cannot find trucks. But statistics say 70% of trucks going back to Dar es Salaam or Mombasa are empty.
They're empty. Yeah.
So what we realize is that the issue is that there is a lot of cargo and there is also a lot of trucks. But the issue is that these two guys can't find each other, right? And that's where at Apex, so that's the problem that we're trying to solve. So if you look at a while back, let's look at the taxi industry. If you needed a taxi, you had to go to where the taxis park, or you had to know a guy who drives a taxi, and you will call them. But we all know how that worked. It'd be like, oh, I'm here. Give me like an hour or whatever. But right now with the new development in technology, if you need a ride, you just call a ride to where you are. So that same transformation is what we're trying to do in logistics. So instead of a truck owner, if you have a truck, instead of you going to park your truck somewhere and putting a for hire sign, ask for transport, that's just wasting time, right? So you can simply get on Apex Loads and you can search for cargo or post your truck. The same is true for the cargo owners. Instead of you running around to find a truck or calling people that to find a truck, you will bring that truck right to you, right? Because the biggest issue that you have, like right now, logistics, the cost of logistics. Right now, shipping in East Africa is 50% higher than in the US or Europe. And a lot of that is due to inefficiency. So let me give you an example of what happens. So if a broker has cargo, so they usually call their 10 or 5 guys that they know. I say, hey, I have cargo, can you pick it up or something? But usually those guys are not going to be available. So what does he do? He calls another broker. I say, hey, do you have any trucks? So now you've introduced another broker. And sometimes you might find cargo has 3 brokers.
It's a good thing that you mentioned brokers, because they're everywhere and they're taking these opportunities for the young people.
So the biggest thing is a lot of people have, if you don't understand logistics, a lot of people have a misconception that you can replace a broker. That is impossible. You cannot have logistics without brokers. So let me give you an example.
But now they're eating into the youth's money as well, and opportunities as well.
So let's look at an example. Let's take, for instance, East African breweries. So East African breweries, they ship 200 trucks. They ship 200 trucks a day. EABL, they don't have time to deal with one-off transporters, 200 of them in a day. That's why they will use a broker, so they will use 20 brokers, and then those brokers will go find those trucks. But EABL doesn't have that time. So you see why you cannot replace the freight broker.
All right.
And the young guys are we're empowering them. You want to be a freight broker? You can be a freight broker. Just go get cargo, and you can go on Apex Load and find a transporter. It's as easy as that.
Yes, we have the African Tech Summit as we wind up. What are some of the lessons that the young men and women in the country, and more specifically innovators and people with budding companies like you, learn from that, based on how Kenya is in the region the tech space in the region is quite advanced as we compare with our neighbors.
Right. So the biggest I would like to encourage our youth is that, like, yes, you know, being an entrepreneur is not easy. You know, like, it took us like 3 years to get where we are right now. So it's a journey. But the biggest thing, like you kind of like Nelson Mandela used to say, you know, it's only impossible until it's done. So you can do it. You know, I'm not a genius by any means. You're just a guy who had an idea, and you just gotta be resourceful. But what I would encourage, kind of like the government right now, I'm really loving what they're doing, trying to digitize everything. And what our young people need is support. You know, like, there are kids here with brilliant ideas. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody in Kenya had the idea of Apex Loads. But they didn't have the support or the encouragement to pursue it. There's all these brilliant ideas. Like, I've talked to a lot of people looking at platforms, you know, like Uber, and they say, oh man, I had that idea, you know, but what happened? You know, like, look at whenever we were in high school, we had this thing called Science Congress. Yes. Where, you know, brilliant kids would come with the idea, and then we go to competition and test that. But after the competition, that was it. Like, there was no follow-up. And that's how startups are born, you know, these ideas. So if we create an environment where young people can go exercise their ideas and get the support they need, get the mentorship they need, we'll have a lot of awesome startups in Kenya. I really believe that.
All right. So, indeed, thank you so much, Charles Thuo. He is the CEO and founder of Apex Loads. Talking about mentorship, I've remembered, I've seen the TSC chairman, Jamlik Muturi, who happened to be my biology teacher, and he nurtured. You've talked about Science Congress. It's a very good thing about mentorship, because I remember there is, in our class, there were 2 guys. They were able to do the Science Congress. They went to the nationals. They became #1. They went to Japan. They won as well, and even got scholarship. Indeed, thank you. But we ran out of time. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Ben Troy Njue. Lucy Mora had been our sign language interpreter earlier on. Now we have Susan Thuku. And again, we are keeping a keen eye on those parliamentary committees that are currently on. Remember, the Senate and the National Assembly do have their sessions today after the long recess. And also we are keeping tabs on what is happening at the Nyayo National Stadium, where President Ruto, his deputy, and a host of other government and non-government officials will be leading the National Prayer Day today to pray for, among others, the drought situation and the country as a whole. But for me, thank you so much for watching. I'm now giving the baton to the Swahili desk. We have Tamrini and Kurunzi Mashinani. Do have yourself a blessed morning, a minute to midday. Thank you so much.